Hi, students. Hope you are all doing well. Haven't you? How is your stay at home during these lockdown days? As on today, nearly 1.3 lakhs people lost their lives because of COVID 19. And still, the people across the world under the threat of this pandemic. Do you know the meaning of pandemic? What does pandemic mean? A disease that spreads over a whole country or the whole world. This pandemic is creating the confusion and fear among the people. They began asking the questions. Is it the end of world? Is it going to perish? What is your opinion? How would be the end of the world or the earth? One poet in English literature is trying to find an answer to this question through a simple poem, and it has a profound ideas. His name is Robert Frost, and the title of the poem is Fire and Ice. Where is he going to take us through this poem? Yeah, it's good. He's taking us to the real reason for the earth destruction. As I told you, this poem is written by Robert Frost, and you are familiar to the poet. You studied his masterpiece, Wrought Not Taken, in your 9th class text. You know, he is very popular among the lovers of literature. Even in India, he is very popular. Do you know, our former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru kept 4 lines of his poem near his bed while he was about to die, and they are from his poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. What I want to say is, he's very close to the hearts of many who love poetry and literature. Frost always discussed human relation with nature, solitude, anxieties and feelings of man, and his poems are widely read. Robert Frost was born in the year 1874 and died in 1963. He left the world late half of the 20th century. Of course, he is the poet of 20th century. He witnessed 2 world wars, and his poem Fire and Ice was written immediately after the First World War in 1920. What the poem is talking about, how the world is going to end. Now let me read the poem for you. Listen carefully. Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Hope you enjoyed the poem. I hope you have created some ideas in you, and some words will be with you. The world will end. Phrases like the world will end. And the next idea will be fire and ice. Now you may ask questions, or many questions may pop out from your mind. How the world is going to end? This kind of questions are being asked by the people across the world, even today. And 1918, you know that the World War was entered. The aftermath of the World War created a great disappointment among the people. They were in a confused in the no man's land. Then the people had the same question in their minds. Well, before we are going into the poem in depth, to analyze the poem, let me ask you a few questions. Who is the speaker in this poem?
Sir, the speaker of the poem is Robert Frost.
Robert Frost. Yes, that means poet himself. So how did you understand it? How could you tell the answer very fast?
Because He wrote
Yeah,
the poem, sir.
when we read the poem, it is not that he wrote the poem. You said it because when we read the poem, we come across the first person, the noun, the pronoun I. I is everywhere. Is it not? I hope. No, he said, I hold. It's
Yes,
like
sir.
that. So when you come across the personal pronoun I, you can make yourself sure that the person is narrative, the first person narrative. This poem is first person narrative. Therefore, the speaker of the poem is the poet himself. Good.
Yes, sir.
Now, let us move on to the second question. Because answering to these questions are very much necessary before we go and analyze the poem in detail in view of our public exam. The next question is, what is the time of the poem? Let us try to find out the time of the poem. When does this poem happen? Because time of the text is very important in order to understand, the theme of the poem. And it is very easy to understand the time of the poem when you look at the verbs that are used in the poem. You can see that some say, there is a verb say. It is not said, it is say. There is a verb sit. You can see I hold in the poem. It is not I held. And it will end. It will end. It is not ended. So what do you understand from this? Can you guess the time that is used in the poem? What is the time that is used in the poem?
Present
See,
tense, sir.
it is the time that is used in the poem is present. That means he is using the present tense. It is the present time. Therefore, it is relevant anytime. Even this poem can be used, can be read and analyzed even during the time of COVID-19. So that means it is applicable to any situation. Though the poem was composed between First World War and Second World War, but this poem is so applicable, so relevant even today. Now the next question is, where does the poem take place? Actually, you can see that the poem is not taking place in any particular place, because here you cannot find the mention of village or city. It, it means that it has got a universal application. It can happen anywhere. It can happen in Europe, it can happen in America, it can happen in Bangalore, it can happen in Kodagu, it can happen anywhere. So it has got a universal appeal, and this poem is beyond time. Now, what is the theme of the poem? And speaking about, it is very clear. The theme of the poem is speaking about the end of the world. So now the question is, why is the poet asking this question? Why is he asking this question? I asked this question in the introduction itself. How the world is going to end? Why the poet is asking this question to us? What is his intention behind asking this question to us? Why does he want to ask this question to us?
Sir, as we know, when something is born, the rule of the whole universe is when something is born, it must die, sir. That might be the one of the reason. And the second reason is this poem was written between World War One and World War Two. So World War was a war which could lead to the destruction of the whole world. So I think that's why Robert Frost has asked us the question, when does the world end?
Any other answer?
Sir, he wants us to realize that whatever we are doing is will bring the world to an end. Because after the First World War, he got to know that because of human greed and all his greed and whatever his desires, because of his desires, he is becoming the slave of his desires. Because of which he is waging wars and he is destroying his own self. So at the end of the day, the whole world will be destroyed like this. So he wants us to realize that whatever we are doing is wrong, and he wants us to correct it. So he's
Okay,
asking at that question.
that's a good answer. So he wants the people to interpret this. He wants the people to have a retrospection. What is the root cause of all these problems? What is taking man really to the calamity? Why are we suffering from COVID-19? What may be the reason? And this is a time for us to contemplate upon that. I feel this poem is so relevant today, and this poem takes us through COVID-19 to the valid reason, the solid reason of all the maladies, all the atrocities that we have been suffering from. Now, we need to analyze the poem word by word, and that we will do it in the next lesson. Join us in the next lesson. Thank you all, and have a good day.